Hello and welcome to Context. I'm Enrico Wilford and thank you so much for joining us on this program today. On today's program, we have putting things in context for us from the water sector is the Managing Director of the Guyana Water Inc., GWI as we call it here in this country, Dr. Richard Van Wijs-Charles. Dr. Van Wijs-Charles, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Enrico. Good to be here.
Wonderful. What are the GWI's priority areas for the year, for 2019? What new wells, what pipe-borne wells, what are you going to be doing?
Well, we are looking at the gaps of access to different populations across the country, on the coast and in the hinterland. In particular, the mandate of the President of addressing the inequities between the hinterland regions, which are regions 1, 7, 8, and 9, and the coastal regions. We are intensifying our work and organization and management to look at the hinterland regions in particular. And as a result, we've just created a new department, the hinterland department, to focus on these areas. Now, on the coast also, we are looking at populations, for example, in Region 6, we've just completed a well at Port Morant, and we are refurbishing another well at Williamsburg. In Region 3, we're having a new well at Westminster, and that would deal with the expansion of the system at Parfait Harmony and Lust and Rust. And we are looking at, for example, in Providence, and also refurbishing some systems in Linden together. But in addition to that, we have a major project funded by IDB and the European Union, which is looking at supplies for treatment of water for sheet anchor, diamond, and IFLUC. And that's a major project. So they should be coming in by October, no later than October of 2019. So there's a major, major investment across. Additionally, in the hinterland, we're looking not only at the access, but the quality of water. So we've established a number of mini laboratories. One is in Lethem. You know, there's one in Region 6, one at Eccles, and we've distributed kits for testing in Region 1 and working to get Region 7 established also.
Dr. Van Wijs-Charles, we are in a period of the country that everybody now checks and see what did you do, what are you going to be doing? And I hear things like the country has no plan, and no vision, no good life, you know. Yet, I recall a former president of this country saying the difficulty about putting down pipes just for water is if you were to put a water pipe from here to Maikoni, you probably go off the island of Barbados. You know, the difficulty of doing it. So,
well, the issue is when you compare the hinterland, and especially now because of climate change, a lot of the sources in the hinterland were originally surface water sources, creeks, springs, etc. With climate change, you would recall in 2017, Region 9 in particular experienced significant problems in terms of access to water. As a result of that, we've had to put a number of wells. GWI had put in the north 8 wells, and then this year, the Brazilian Army had put another 8 in the south. Now, the challenge with the hinterland is the rocky formation, and therefore, many attempts have been made. For example, in Region 7, in Tasserine, contractor made about 4 or 5 attempts and is not successful. In Region 8 in Campbelltown, only recently with new technology, we were able to have success, and that will be a good story for Campbelltown in Region 8. We are, in addition to what the Brazilians have done, we'll be looking at a number of other areas. We have, for example, I've just come back today from Region 9, and I'm going to all of the villages. So in Arnaputa, for example, whilst they have 1 or 2 wells, we have to drill more wells in Arnaputa because of how the populations were scattered. If you took a place, village in like Quarry, although there is a well, at the extreme ends of the village, that's where the population is actually settled. So the challenge, and then the challenge of electricity. So we have got in the hinterland really to look at the alternative sources of energy to power the systems. So we are looking at solar, photovoltaic systems, and in combination with wind. And in some cases, we have to combine with generators or pumps, you know.
The good thing about speaking on NCN and speaking on context, Dr. Van West-Giles, is that you're actually speaking to the people at Arnaputa, and you're actually speaking to the people in Aishalton and in Oriala and in Mabaruma and Madia, Lethem, and across the country. And so many times we who are city-centered, who live along the coast, tend to forget, as we were saying, the vastness of the society.
And for example, in our program this year, we've got to refurbish the system in Oriala. We have a major project with Paramakatoy, where we're tracking the water from the hills. And we've just completed the full analysis of the solar voltaic systems. So that is going to be a real boost for the community. And in all of these hinterland ventures, what is important is that the work is being done in collaboration with the village councils. So we are not just, as I was in Crowdar the day before yesterday, and one of the comments from one of the residents was, we're glad you're here and listening to us, because what had happened previously, people just came in, we never knew what they were here for, they did and they left. And so there's no ownership, no stakeholdership with it. And the other thing is we are working with servicemen from within the village to maintain the system.
And the other challenge is that persons along the coast say, well, why are you doing these things for the hinterland and we have problems on the coast? Well, we're still divided that way.
No, well, we're divided, but we are all citizens of the country. And many people on the coast are not aware of some of the challenges our brothers and sisters in the hinterland experience. They have got, you know, in a village called Maracanata, the elderly have got to walk significant distances. So we are now running lines so the water is in close proximity to their homes. So they haven't got to go down a hill to fetch water and come back up and that type of approach. So we're really working aggressively. And the other thing too is the people in the hinterland are willing to participate in the process and contribute from a self-help manner in many instances.
You know, the other challenge I'm sure you may find is, as you were talking about one of the villages where people are on what is really the fringe of the village and the pump is in the center, is how we have grown and developed as a country, both in terms of urban and village development, where sometimes it's like when you're setting a field, when you're playing, you know, outside cricket, you just take three slips and everybody scatter. So people are scattered all over the society. That makes it difficult in terms of planning, doesn't it?
It is, and I think even as we speak now, the village councils are realizing that, look, we have to get to some form of planning as more and more people come in, because what you're witnessing in many of these villages, there's good movement from different other villages, people are coming in, and even some people from the coast. So they are looking at how their villages are going to be planned, because the point we make to them also, it is costly, because everybody now would like to have the water directly to their homes. So just as the people on the coast, they want to shower in their homes. They want to flush their toilets. So they are now realizing, look, we've got to put some arrangement in place that things are going to be more cost effective if we want these services.
Along the coast too, how does the planning help GWI or this, I don't want to say squatting, but that's what I mean.
Well, that is an issue, and that is as a result of the rural-urban drift. You would see, and it's what approach we must take in going forward to housing on the coast also. That, you know, sometimes people are awarded house lots, but there is no infrastructure. So the drainage and everything else is absent. And so many people do not, although they are awarded the house lots, are unable to really take up and build. So they come into town, as you see in Durban Backlands, for example, which we are now trying to put some access there, because they are on the banks of the Conservancy. And so we have to look at both their access, because you've got kids in there. We want to reduce the waterborne diseases and so forth. So many people may say, well, these people are not going to pay. But, you know, there is something that we say, look, if diseases have no boundaries. So we have to be careful. And at the end of the day, access to water is a human right. And my position is, if you want it into your home, then that's where our customer relationship comes into play in terms of you being a customer for GWI. And so whilst housing and the other agencies look at the squatter settlements, I don't think, and you know I'm a physician, so I'm a public health physician also, we can avoid not providing access, because for me, access to water is a human right.
And that brings us to the whole issue of, as you said, you have issues of power supply, therefore you have issues of the pumps. You have issues of pilfering and poor people. And in some areas, I still see persons going to the main, trying to get some water, and then fetching the water. Is either GWI cut off the water?
Well, that's a challenge. That's a challenge.
They don't have access.
And we have in Guyana some behaviors which we have to change. When you are unmetered, you have no control and no understanding of conservation in terms of the use of water. When you are metered and you have to pay in accordance with your consumption, then it switches on, that I have to look at how I'm using the water most efficiently. So our task right now is to ensure that everyone is metered, because it then comes to the point where if I use so much, I have to pay for it. So you find, you know, behaviors such as when I'm brushing my teeth, the water is running. Right now we have an ad going where you're washing your clothes and everybody has a cell phone, so the cell phone rings and the pipe is running, and therefore, as an unmetered customer, you pay one standard rate. As a metered customer, well, that's where you have to pay for that consumption. So we're making the change and working with customers so that they have an understanding in terms of how they should conserve and use the water. Because, you know, especially in Georgetown, the cost to produce the water is very high because we're taking a lot of surface water from the conservancy. That has to be treated at this point in time with chemicals, but with some work that we're doing, I'm hoping that by September, we should have some filters which would reduce the cost of importation of chemicals for the treatment of the water and have it in accordance with WHO standards. But we're moving ahead in terms of, and there's still a lot of gaps on the coast in terms of people's access. Because as more and more people seek to acquire house lots, they're going into areas in which we have no transmission lines, and therefore also we have no wells. So we've got to analyze the production, whether the productive capacity we have in the area can service these new schemes that are coming up from housing.
But Dr. Van der Charles, you have, surely there's a master plan somewhere that the GWI will know that the public infrastructure or the housing ministry or the telecommunications sector will move into this area and do this. And that is what you're working with.
We now have a good collaboration with housing. We have an inter-sectoral committee in which we are having an understanding in terms of where housing lots are being awarded. We haven't dotted all the I's and crossed the T's as yet, but what we are doing really, as we know the house lots are going in, we do the calculations as to whether or not our productive capacity at this point in time will be able to service these additional people. So in some cases, either through GWI's investment or government's investment, we are putting down new wells. For example, in Farm, we're due to put a well in Farm because that's a large area where probably over 1,000 house lots have been awarded. And in some cases, many people have gotten their mortgages already, so they've started to build. So at the end of the day, they need water, even while building. So we're working in that area. We were able, for example, recently in phase 3 of Providence, which we're having difficulty, that the residents are now having access to water. So it's a challenge, but we're working, because one of the things you see, and that's why metering is important, is that once you begin to use water efficiently, more people then can have access. But because there is the wastage and the breakage of lines, sometimes when either the Ministry of Infrastructure or the local authorities are cleaning trenches, inadvertently the lines are broken. Sometimes the operators cover it with mud, we don't know. And then we hear shortages in the area, so we then have to comb the area to find out where these leaks are, mend them, so that the water can be restored and more people can have access. A good example is Shitanka. We were able to meter completely, more or less. And we were able to take off 2 stations, Canefield and Cumberland. And the water that is produced at the Shitanka end is serving those customers. Now, because of Gaisuko, we have now to bring Gangaram on, and 1 or 2 other communities. So at least we have other sources available to service those populations.
Which brings us to billing. Because I think it's the same people that you're talking about start to complain, but look at my bill, oh my gosh, it has something to do with the government and people don't like us and so on. What's the real story? Put it in context.
Well, again, they're coming from an unmetered state to a metered state. And in the unmetered state, they used water without control. Some may have kitchen gardens and so forth, so they're using the water. And we were able to show them what their consumption was. Very high. A few people in the area had significantly high consumption. We were able to work with them, and some of them have reduced it significantly. Now you understand, because important in all of this is your internal plumbing also, and the leaks in your yards. Because if you have pipes that are running, a toilet cistern that is leaking, that meter is going to spin. And you've got to pay for that water because it's being recorded as your consumption in your home. So this becomes very, very important in terms of the use. The rates are not sanctioned by us. It's by the Public Utilities Commission. I think you would recall we had hearings last year with PUC. They've approved the rates, and we have to go forward.
But why would people in the areas you mentioned not realize they're using so much water? I mean, as you said, a high use.
Right, because they never had meters there.
That's
right?
the only reason?
Yeah, they never had, well, they know, but you see, they know that they're using water, but the consumption, they're not aware of how much water they're using. But the same folks too will pay $100 for this bottle of water. And our charge for a 450 gallon is $60. But they are going to pay $100 for this bottle. And what we charge for a 450 gallon, that's the tariff.
That's like a tank. That's like a black tank.
Yeah, a black tank.
But they'll say, your water not good.
Well, we can show you the results.
And isn't that the crux of the problem, though? That
no, I think
the credibility and the
well, I think, let me say to you, why, for example, you're having the treatment plant in Shitanka. It's microbiologically safe, but the sand where the water is coming from is an A sand well. The A sand wells at different parts of the country, the iron content is high. We have been able to, whilst we build these treatment plants, use a chemical to deal with the iron content. In some cases, if you look at the iron content in Region 2, it's probably one of the highest in the country. So we've had to put a lot of the systems in place to Region 2. But I was telling you earlier about the research we're doing with Culligan, and we think by September of this year, we will have a solution for the entire country of putting some inline filters which will deal with the iron and hydrogen sulfide. And that's because of where the water is coming from, the aquifer.
Yeah, this is along the aquifer system, or?
Mm-hmm. In the B sands. Mm-hmm. The B sands have got little iron. The A sands have got the most iron. And you got, along with the iron, hydrogen sulfide, which with aeration goes off. But that is the depth. To get water from the B sands, you may have to go down to about 1,800 feet. And that is very, very, very costly, you know. So the more, with the investment that we have now, going to the A sands and with new technology, I think we'll have a better result very soon.
The city itself, though, Dr. Van West Giles, depends, the capital city depends mostly on surface water.
On surface and ground. So we have about 60-40 relationship, more surface, and we're now rehabbing some wells in Shelter Belt. But the city's challenge is the network, the distribution network. It's very, very old. And so you will see a lot of, we can raise the pressure significantly in Georgetown. Everything is set with new pumps, but
You bust the pipe.
and then you're told, and these pipes are ductile iron. They're about, the dimensions about 20 inches in diameter, but they're about 80 to 100 years old. So we're now trying to change. I think what we're trying to look at, if we can change the transmission lines along the St. John Road to Cemetery Road, and then along Church Street, right? We should be able, and I'm trying to see how best we can get some more money to make those changes as quickly as possible. But we have other challenges in places like Kitty and Kingston and so forth, where the network must be changed, but it will take some time. We are intensifying our work on the quality, though, because we're testing water regularly, which the residents are getting.
So sometimes the cost of purification is higher than the cost of delivery.
Well, yes, because we have to test, we have to, remember the water is coming down the conservancy. So we've got to be sure, first of all, in terms of that water that is coming down has to be treated. Now, we're using a lot of alum. We spend about roughly, in terms of chemicals, about over $600 million each year, just for chemicals, right? So
That's $3 million US.
just for chemicals, right? And we have a challenge. Sometimes they're coming as far as, with the procurement system, as far as sometimes Turkey, China, the UK. Sometimes the boats are delayed. And so we have to ensure that they're here on time, or else, you know, you get back to the stage of discolored water. And that's where the alum is used, etc.
And the alum is for the entire system.
Not only Georgetown.
Not just Georgetown.
Bartica and Linden.
And the hinterland areas, as you were saying
The
earlier
hinterland
on,
areas are, very interestingly, when we just tested the wells that the Brazilian army dug, though the water samples are very good, no minerals, and we haven't got the challenge of microbiological contamination. What we have a challenge of, though, in those areas is how we work with the population as to where the latrines are placed, and we have to ensure that they're a good distance from where the wells are, etc.
and you get better pressure in those areas.
Well, we have the pressure, which
because you're
is
putting in new systems.
new systems. The terrain in some of the villages, it's mountainous, undulating, and so forth. So that in itself, we have to put in some special valves there and so. But all of these systems are now being modeled and ensuring that the right pipes are being laid in the villages.
You're with the program Context. We're speaking with Dr. Richard Van West Giles, who is the Managing Director of Guyana Water, Inc. And we're talking about how the water sector is being rolled out in the country, so to speak. And if you were with us earlier, you would hear him talk about, you would have heard that he spoke about the work in the hinterland areas and along the coast. When we go to the second half of the program, as we go to the second half of the program right now, we're going to talk some other things about billing sanitation, and some other constraints and expanding operations within GWI. Dr. Van West Charles, people have complained that you're estimating bills, your bills are not right, you had IT issues and so on. Put this in context for us. What is good about your system? What are some of the things that we have to look out for? And what are the things we have to look forward to?
Well, I would say when I joined GWI, there was a high percentage of estimation. Meters were not read on time, and there was a lot of estimation of people's bills, a lot of adjustments. I would say some form of corruption was involved in it also. But I think we were able to get to the point now, because we are now billing monthly, get to the point whereby and we haven't gotten there fully with 100% efficiency at all, where the meters have got to be read on time and the bills sent. Now, that in itself is a challenge. But before I elaborate, we know the system that we met is a dinosaur. And it's not one of the best billing systems that we have. So we are in the process. We have done extensive work. We're very clear where we have to go. We are now looking at the financing to get a system which is more agile and a decentralized approach, so that within short order that people can check their bills. The other thing is, the challenge we have is that you haven't got enough payment centers for people to pay their bills. So if you are in Maikoni, for example, the office, our office is in Untitled. So you have to pay a bill about $2,000. You're not going to come out to drive from Maikoni to Untitled. So we're trying to, our IT department right now, they're working to look at ATM machines, kiosks, and different payment options, so that the customer can have easy access to paying their bills. So that is an aggressive approach we're taking right now. But we are aware of the challenge that some people have. But that doesn't mean that you haven't got to pay your bill. Because at the end of the day, if money doesn't come in, we can't provide a service. When a pipe is broken, you call, you want a service. And so how our population is scattered, we have to get transportation. You know, when I took over, everything was contracted out. Every single thing. Transportation, welding, everything was contracted out. So we are now bringing some things back into GWI. If we wanted to use a crane, we had to rent a crane, and if we wanted it for 1 hour, we had to pay for 4 hours. So we now have a crane. But getting back to billing, we are even trying to look at the design of the bill, because sometimes people don't understand the bill. We've done a survey, and the survey shows, because of the issues, although we have SurePay and Bill Express and so, many people prefer to come to the office. So if you looked at East Bank, the main payment center is at Peters Hall. But you look at the population at Diamond, it's a very large population, and you continue to go up the bank. So we are now looking at establishing a center in Diamond and other parts of the East Bank, where the customers in the East Bank can have easy access to pay their bills, or if there are issues to be resolved, that we can resolve it as quickly as possible.
I think, though, you were also working with a technology company, young people, with regard to using the technology, using the mobile phone, using using an app, so to speak. Where are you with that?
Some customers are using it. We are even encouraging people to use the banking system to pay their bills. I think people are checking their bills via the app. We still have to work out some issues with the Intellect Storm. But I think, and they have done a good job in terms of working with us in the development of the app. But that is, I think, one of the issues that we have to ensure that, the society is increasing with the computer literacy. Not everybody is still happy to go online and pay their bills. They want to go in to have a word with staff. So we're working with the different categories of customers. And what we're doing, some people are now even asking for an e-bill. So we are moving to the e-bill. If you opt for it, we want to be sure that you agree to receive an e-bill, and we are going to send you your e-bill instead of sending a physical bill to you, because that in itself is a challenge for us. Some people...
Which is the challenge, the physical bill?
Yes, the delivery of the physical bill, because sometimes they get to the home, the gates are locked, and so you're unable to leave a bill. So we don't know when you're home. We have a call center, so we try to call you to say when you would be home. But in the meantime, you're missing a payment. And some people leave and they don't notify, and then they come back and they're disconnected. So we're trying to avoid those issues whereby if you want an e-bill, you can get an e-bill, you're notified, and so forth. And we're taking different measures to alert customers of the timing for their bills, when to pay, etc.
And you're going to go towards like direct deductions where people can sign up and say every month GWI is authorized to do this. So
we want to make it easier for the customer.
You are expanding operations. You have new offices, you make it easier and so on. But we still have sanitation and sewage problems.
Right. So the system here of sewage in Georgetown, let's start with Georgetown. You have about 24 pump stations. They were refurbished, but what we don't do is treat our sewage. And we've been having discussions last year with some companies. One is a British company about the treatment of the sewage. I think it is an important aspect for us as a country to be in compliance with the Sustainable Development Goals, because that calls for the treatment of sewage.
But why?
Well, our sewage system is probably one of the oldest around. This is, if I recall, it's since 1927, the set network in Georgetown. But we have not been able to establish a sewage treatment plant. So a lot of our discussions are far way down the road right now with a company out of the UK. And we are looking at different financing options for this. To start with Georgetown, we've created other towns under the new administration. So we've got to look at those areas also in terms of the treatment of sewage. We have a large number of septic tanks. We are now refurbishing the plant at Tuckville, because that's going to be important in terms of the overall plan of treatment. And even doing a redesign for the septic tanks. Because what has happened, I think, we've lost control of the design from a public health standpoint. And so previously, when I was minister in the 80s, Central Housing and Planning and the Central Board of Health had the responsibility of approving the designs for septic tanks. Right now, anybody constructs a septic tank. I was just in Region 9, and they were complaining this was in Masara, and they had teachers' quarters, had a septic tank, but no outflow. So they were having problems with the stuff going back in. So, and obviously these are things just built by people without any sense of how they should function and the proper chambers. So we've got to put some order back in place. You know, a lot of these things have, which we did in the 80s, just went out of the window.
But the Dr. Van Wyk, as you might have seen me sniggering a little, because right where we are at NCN, I'm also chairman and CEO. I've seen issues with even our septic tank, and I ask, why do we have people inspecting these things? What is happening? Why there's no outlet? Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm married to an environmental health officer, and these things come up all the time.
Exactly.
But these are laws that we have in place.
Yes, and
we just don't enforce
for some reason, the structure of some of these ministries have been changed, and the staffing who are supposed to perform these monitoring functions are not necessarily in place to do what they're supposed to do. And at the same time, what you see emerging is high indices of Culex mosquito, and we're talking about filaria. And that is one of the breeding grounds, these septic tanks. You know, so we have got to get back to where we were in terms of ensuring that the public health laws are monitored and applied, the designs are approved, and the designs monitored. You had to submit your plan, and the designs are approved, and then the environmental officer will be out there monitoring the construction of the septic tanks, etc. Now it's, for me, it seems to be a free-for-all.
Yeah, whatever comes to do. But then the other aspect of it is that once you have all these regulatory things in place, then people say, oh, I better pay the man to get this done.
You know, we have to get back to some...
How do we deal with corruption versus...
What we have to do is ensure that our systems are efficient. We understand our productivity and efficiency indicators are well set. So the public knows that if I submit a plan today, in 3 days or 4 days, whatever is the indicator for efficiency, that will be addressed and it's out. If we don't get to the point of establishing these indicators and the public is aware that if I submit my plan and it shall be processed within 4 days, and it's processed in 4 days, people will have confidence in the system. But if these things aren't done, that's when the corruption seeps in, and you say, boy, I need my plan early, I'm gonna help you, and that's how it goes. But it has to be, it's a management issue, and we need to establish the indicators very clearly.
And we, as you said, we have to move away from trying to know somebody inside,
Right.
which has been the...
Right, that's the problem. And it's not only for these plans. It goes for birth certificates, passports, everything, you know.
So you've got hotlines, Dr. Van Wyk, you've got a standard operating procedure for addressing issues. In terms of leaks and broken mains and so on and emergency repairs, this is a vast country. Everybody knows we're 83,000 square miles, but a lot of people don't realize we are...
It's a challenge.
That is a challenge. We are basically from just above the equator, about 1 degree above the equator, to 8 degrees above the equator, which is a huge...
And you see, it has a cost. So we will find if we have an unmetered customer and we have to disconnect, or we have a challenge where you have a major breakage, especially in Georgetown, for example. Sometimes the guys have to work all night to try to ensure by in the morning the system is restored so people can have access to water and get there. But it is costly, and we're trying to respond as quickly. We have emergency teams now, and sometimes we have to use contractors to assist in dealing with some of these measures.
Are you also using technology? Because go ahead.
Right, so previously we wouldn't have known when a pump station is down. Right now, most of our pump stations, we're using technology where we can receive on our phones and we know when the pump station is down, when the pressure has dropped, etc. So we're using more and more technology. We haven't got to wait to send a mobile operator to a pump station and then he says, but the pump station is off. As soon as there's an outage, we receive an alarm to our phones and we are aware that something is wrong at the pump station.
And I think the Ministry of Public Telecommunication once had a hackathon in which one of the group of young people came up with this idea that you can use your phone to report when there is a breakage, report when you have
leaks,
leaks and so on. You have
you can send it in and you can take a picture. If you don't know exactly where it is, then we are linking with a GPS system which will give us and our staff some idea as to where the problem is. But sometimes the leaks are, if you look at Linden, for example, or in the hinterland, when there are leaks, because of the terrain, it's difficult to discern. So sometimes to discover the leaks, we've got to use dyes to see where the dye is in the sand, and then we know that a leak is occurring. We have other techniques which we haven't employed as yet, because some of them are costly, leak detection systems, but we have to get there because that's when the water waste, and that's where a compromise of quality comes in.
Dr. Van West Charles is the Managing Director of the Guyana Water, Inc. And one of the usage of water is firefighting. So often we hear when the fire people turn up, Guyanese, oh, turn up and they ain't got no water, GWI.
Well, you know, hydrants are, I would say it's a no man's land responsibility. GWI has stepped up. We've refurbished more than 800 hydrants in the city. We believe going forward, it's a security matter. And in terms of planning of communities, they should establish hydrants in every community. This is not done in a lot of communities. And what I do know in Georgetown, the hydrants are, you see people, and sometimes we get calls that, oh, the hydrant is, people are wasting water. No, we are actually doing flushing of the lines through the hydrants. But the hydrants are tested, and we relate with the fire service. In a number of stations, when there's a fire, the fire service can now, we've worked with them in having adapters that they can go to our pump stations. The challenge we have is the sustainability of power. If in the area that you have the fire, there is an outage, and we haven't got a generator in place, then we are unable to pump water. This has happened in Sparran Dam and so forth. So we have been trying to get generators, but you know, you've got to look at your allocative efficiency. Sometimes you need to put a well as against putting hydrants. So those are some of the things that we have to do. Sometimes we have to prioritize, but that is a challenge for us. It's sometimes not the availability of the water. It's our capacity to pump due to the loss of power.
Dr. Van West Charles, you've got just little time left, but I can't be a good journalist and ask you to come here to talk on context on GWI. And I know there's some personal and other issues that have come up about Dr. Van West Charles with regard to another company that he's involved in. I know you may not have been prepared for this, but give us an idea, are these things impinging on your work at GWI?
Of course not. Of course not. Whoever thinks so doesn't understand how the company functions. And they are two separate things, and my roles are different. You know, I had, in my history of working, I have been responsible for programs in multiple countries. As a minister, I was responsible for some 4 ministries at one time. Ministry of Health, Water, Environment, and Housing, all together. So the comments from 1 or 2 ill-informed operatives don't really trouble me, because I know that we are working. I have a board. If it were so, the board would have been, and the board is an efficient board, would have responded to those matters. But no, not at all.
Well, we leave it there because yes. I think there's a court matter that might
That's
come
right.
up. Thank you so much to Dr. Richard Van West Charles, the Managing Director of Guyana Water, Inc., and he was talking about the water sector and what is being done for all of you around the country, and those of you who are living abroad and like to comment on what is happening in Guyana. This is to inform you that these are some of the things that are happening in the society. Thank you so much for joining us on NCN on Context. I'm Enrico Wilford. Have a pleasant rest of the day. Goodbye for now.